reckless, excessive, and thuggish. She said she agreed with a literary comparison previously made in court by a lawyer for Mr. Curti's family, Peter Hamill SC.
Mr. Hamill's analogy in his written closing submissions with the character in Joseph Heller's Catch-22 screaming, "Help, police," as a cry for help against police action is searingly apt. Roberto's only foes during his ordeal were the police. There was no victim other than Roberto, no member of the public who suffered an iota from his delusionary fear. Certainly he'd taken an illicit drug, as has become all too common in today's society. But he was guilty of no serious offence. He was proffering no threat to anyone.
And it was to literature that the coroner turned once again to describe the way in which a group of police officers set upon the 21-year-old Brazilian student as he lay handcuffed on the ground after being brought down by a taser shot to the back. During that struggle, they tasered him 8 times, used up to 3 cans of OC spray on him, and restrained him with physical force.
A few of the other constables seem to have thrown themselves into a melee with an almost ungoverned pack mentality, like schoolboys in Lord of the Flies, with no idea what the problem was, or what threat or crime was supposedly to be averted, or concern for the value of life.
Mary Jerram has strongly recommended that disciplinary action be taken against 5 of the officers involved in the final confrontation, which ended with Roberto Laudisio Curti's death. They ranged in rank at the time of the incident from PC to sergeant. One of the men has since been promoted to inspector. For him, Greg Cooper, Mary Jerram reserved particular scorn.
Inspector, then Sergeant Gregory Cooper. His failure to maintain any objectivity or sensible leadership, quite apart from the unreliability of his evidence, is abhorrent.
The coroner made an open finding on the cause of death of Roberto Laudisio Curti, saying it arose from complex and multifactorial causes. It did state,
nevertheless, it's impossible to believe that he would have died but for the actions of police.
Mike Reynolds is Roberto Laudisio Curti's brother-in-law, with whom the young Brazilian was living at the time of his death. He says the findings don't go far enough.
The coroner has highlighted how excessive, reckless and thuggish some of the police officers were on that evening. The coroner has recommended that some police be investigated for disciplinary action, and we support that. However, the family and our lawyers also believe that charges for certain criminal offences should be raised. The family has made a formal request to Detective Inspector Laidlaw of the Critical Incident Team to pursue charges against the relevant officers.
The coroner has also recommended that there be an immediate review of the contents of New South Wales Police Standard Operating Procedures and Training with regard to the use of taser, OC spray, handcuffing, restraint, and positional asphyxia. And she said that the actions of police during the pursuit and restraint of Roberto Laudisio Curti should be referred to the Police Integrity Commission. Mary Jerram ended her address to court by turning to the family to express her sympathies, saying she didn't think anyone was left untouched by what she called this distressing and difficult matter.
Barbara Miller reporting. Let's go now to the Royal Commission being set up to investigate child sexual abuse. Senior legal and political leaders, including the Attorney General, say it's abhorrent that priests are not always required to go to the police with information.
It was going to be a one-topic movie, fellas.
To report a crime or suspected crime against a child is an offence in most states in Australia, but there's an exception for information passed on in the Confessional.
This is ABC Radio National, The World Today program.
The Confessional is sacrosanct to Catholics, but in one case the World Today has heard it's been used to hide sins. A woman has told the ABC that as a schoolgirl in regional New South Wales, she suffered prolonged sexual abuse at the hands of a priest. She says she was 15 when she was raped, and then, in pain and in an extremely distressed state, the priest who raped her forced her to go to confession. She alleges the priest drove her to a neighbouring parish where another priest was waiting. She says it wasn't the normal time for confession, and she told the priest what had just taken place. For penance, she was told to pray. The alleged offender is now before the courts with at least 3 other alleged victims, claiming he abused them many years after the woman's confession. Under the New South Wales Crimes Act, a priest can't be charged with concealing an indictable offence unless the Attorney-General intervenes. That's almost unheard of. The law was brought in when John Dowd QC was Attorney-General.
For a Catholic, freedom of religion means that you need absolution. That's part of the Catholic faith. At the time, the Parliament passed the law to protect that freedom of religion.
The law varies slightly from state to state, but generally a person who knows about sexual crimes against children can be charged with concealing an offence if they don't tell the police. But if the crime is admitted in the confessional, it's unlikely the priest will be charged. It's an exemption John Dowd agrees with. He's not a Catholic, but he believes freedom of religion is paramount. Can you understand why some people are having...
So if your religion is to allow children to be sexually abused, then that's okay.
To disclose this information and cannot be charged.
Why is it okay for the Catholics, but it wasn't okay when the Hare Krishnas were abusing the children in their religion?
They wouldn't have been told. People only tell priests, largely only tell priests matters under the confession to obtain absolution. If there weren't a process of absolution, most priests wouldn't have been told things. If they're told it outside the confessional, then of course it can be used in evidence. But within the confessional, that's why they obtained the information. So it's part of the freedom of religion.
So do you think that the sanctity of the confessional should
religious freedom to abuse children
it's a law of the New
and
South
protect
Wales
the
Parliament.
abusers?
It's a matter for the New South Wales Parliament.
I think the Catholic Church is going to lose this one.
Who hear confessions, the patients of psychiatrists have been known to confess sins or indeed crimes, but the law is clear for that profession. Louise Newman is a professor of developmental psychiatry at Monash University and a former director of the New South Wales Institute of Psychiatry.
Doctors, in general, are legally obliged and are defined as mandatory reporters.
As a nurse, I'm legally obliged to report any child abuse or child sexual abuse. So are teachers.
And that legal procedure means that we are obliged to report those concerns to relevant child protection authorities. And it also protects, in a legal sense, the doctor from actually breaking confidentiality by making those disclosures.
Do you think the same laws that apply to psychiatrists and doctors more widely, those same laws should be applied to the church?
I think what we need to have a discussion about, and hopefully the inquiry will be looking in great detail at this, is how do we have systems of child protection that are actually uniform, that actually protect children in a much clearer way.
Are you saying that the protection of children should be given greater weight, if you like, to the sanctity of the confessional?
I think the protection of children, whether it's within the church or other organisations, has to take priority.
Professor Newman says priority should be given to children because they're vulnerable. She's all too aware of the damage caused by sexual abuse.
We know that child abuse is one of the most important risk factors for an entire range of mental health problems and poor functioning, poor relationships, and this is a huge social cost.
Psychiatrist Professor Louise Newman in that report by Martin Cudahy. The retired.
Okay. So we have a movie with two topics. Part 1, the coroner's findings on the police thuggery, which caused the death of Roberto Laudisio Curti. And my prediction is the Catholic Church is going to lose the sanctity of the confessional when it comes to child abuse. And that'll be the thin edge of the wedge. Why should a priest be able to withhold knowledge of any crime from the police? So that'll be interesting to see what happens. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.